Today, we're diving into the spooky stories of the Grand Canyon National Park. We'll explore 5 real cases of disturbing deaths that happened there. From mysterious disappearances to tragic accidents, each story reveals the eerie side of this fantastic place. Join us as we uncover what happened and ask, what if there's more to the Grand Canyon than meets the eye? On a brisk April morning in 1993, Donna Spangler, a 58-year-old fitness instructor from Durango, Colorado, stood with her husband, Robert M. Spangler, on a steep trail in Grand Canyon National Park. The air was crisp and their anticipation hung in the air. Little did Donna know, this expedition would be her last. Donna and Robert's relationship showed signs of strain for some time. Despite being together for 3 years, their marriage was marred by disagreement and discontent. They met in April 1989, exactly 4 years before Donna's tragic demise. The following year, they exchanged vows, but their marriage was far from perfect. Their lack of shared interest became increasingly apparent as time went on. Donna, a fitness and health lover, spent her days teaching aerobics at the Durango Health Club. Meanwhile, a country music DJ, Robert, found peace in the great outdoors, often going on solo hiking trips to clear his mind. The spring of 1993 brought a glimmer of hope as the couple planned to hike the Grand Canyon together. It seemed like an opportunity to reconnect and rediscover the bond that had brought them together in the first place. With eagerness in their hearts, they set out for their adventure. Arriving at the Grand Canyon, Robert chose the Grand View Trail for their hike. It was a popular route offering breathtaking views and challenging terrain. Horseshoe Mesa, their intended destination, lay approximately 2,600 feet below the rim. Excitement coursed through Donna as they began their descent. Donna couldn't shake the unease that had settled in her gut as they hiked. She wasn't an experienced hiker, and the rugged land of the trail made her nervous. Still, she pressed on, wanting to make the most of their time together. Their journey led them to a secluded spot near the Last Chance Mine, where they decided to camp for the night. It was a moment of peace and tranquility despite the chaos of their troubled relationship. But the calm was shattered the following day when tragedy struck. In a moment of madness, Robert made a decision that would change their lives forever. Standing face to face with Donna on the trail, he succumbed to his darkest impulses and pushed her over the edge. The world seemed to stand still as Donna tumbled down the cliffside, her screams slowly getting lost in the wind as she fell further down. In an instant, she was gone. Shock and disbelief washed over Robert as he realized what he had done. Frantically, he scrambled down the trail to where Donna's lifeless body lay, her injuries too severe to comprehend. Panic gripped him as he struggled to come to terms with the enormity of his actions. He knew there would be no turning back from this moment, no way to undo the irreparable damage he had caused. In a daze, Robert went to the National Park Service backcountry office, his mind reeling with guilt and regret. He recounted a fabricated tale of Donna's accidental fall, desperate to evade the consequences of his heinous crime. But the truth would not stay hidden for long. Rangers soon discovered discrepancies in Robert's story, leading them to suspect foul play. As they delved deeper into the circumstances surrounding Donna's death, a chilling pattern began to emerge. It seemed that Robert M. Spangler was not the loving husband he appeared to be. In a shocking turn of events, Robert confessed to not only Donna's murder, but also to the deaths of his first wife, Nancy, and their 2 children, Susan and David, nearly 15 years earlier. His confession shocked people, leaving friends and family reeling from the revelation of his dark past. As the details of Robert's crimes came to light, the community struggled to reconcile the image of the man they thought they knew with the cold-blooded killer he had become. His actions shattered lives and left behind a trail of devastation that would haunt those who knew him for years to come. In the end, justice was served, but the scars left by Robert's actions would never fully heal. Donna Spangler, a beloved mother, grandmother, and friend, was gone, her life cut short by the very person who had sworn to love and protect her. What if Donna had listened to her instincts and refused to accompany Robert on their ill-fated hike? Would she still be alive today and still be with him? Regardless of all these questions, the truth remained the same, and that Donna's death was unfair. On January 22, 1977, Michael and Charlotte Sherman went from Texas to California. Michael, a recent dental school graduate, had enlisted in the U.S. Air Force and was relocating for a new assignment. Charlotte, his wife and a dedicated elementary school teacher, accompanied him. After spending the night in Flagstaff, Arizona, the Shermans set off early the following day, eager to explore the Grand Canyon. They arrived at the South Rim entrance between 9:30 and 9:45 a.m., venturing into the park's expansive landscape. The couple decided to venture along the less-traveled West Rim Drive to experience the canyon's breathtaking views away from the crowds. Powell Point was their destination, a scenic overlook known for its panoramic views. As the Shermans gazed at the natural wonders surrounding them, tragedy struck. Just after 11 a.m., their bodies were discovered behind the Powell Memorial. Both had been shot, the apparent victims of a robbery gone wrong. Michael's wallet and Charlotte's purse were missing, suggesting a motive for the crime. Despite the presence of other visitors in the area, no witnesses observed the attack, leaving investigators with few leads. The only clues were reports of a couple matching the description of the assailants seen driving a light-colored station wagon. Law enforcement officials launched an extensive investigation, but the case soon grew cold. Over the years, various theories emerged, ranging from opportunistic robbery to targeted violence. Some speculated that the Shermans may have stumbled upon illicit activity, while others believed they were in the wrong place at the wrong time. In 2008, an experienced investigator, Joe Sumner, joined the Coconino County Sheriff's Office Cold Case Unit, reigniting interest in the mystery. Sumner and his team revisited the evidence, hoping that advances in forensic technology could provide new leads. In 2013, investigators traveled to Georgia to interview potential suspects who matched the description provided by witnesses. Despite their efforts, breakthroughs were not made, not leaving the case at a standstill. The discovery of DNA evidence at the crime scene raised hopes of a resolution, but subsequent analysis failed to gather any matches in law enforcement databases. The identity of the perpetrator remained a mystery, leaving Michael and Charlotte's loved ones grappling with unanswered questions and unresolved grief. As the years passed, the passage of time only deepened the sense of loss for those left behind. Michael's parents, who had hoped to see justice served in their son's murder, passed away without closure. Charlotte's students, deprived of their beloved teacher, grew up without knowing the truth behind her untimely death. Despite the challenges and setbacks, Sumner and his team remained committed to solving the case, determined to bring closure to the victims' families. The mystery of what happened to Michael and Charlotte Sherman continues to haunt the Grand Canyon National Park, sprawling countless questions among people that may never be answered. In the midsummer heat of June 2004, the Grand Canyon National Park bustled with activity as tourists flocked to experience its breathtaking landscapes. Among them was Timothy Clam, a 25-year-old from Illinois. Timothy's journey began innocently enough as he sought to embark on a helicopter tour of the canyon. Eager to secure the best view possible, he repeatedly attempted to book the coveted front seat on a Papillon helicopter's air tour. However, the prime tourist season meant the flights were fully booked, leaving Timothy to stay until an opportunity presented itself. It wasn't until the following day that Timothy's persistence paid off, granting him access to the coveted position he had long wished for. As he sat among his fellow passengers, the anticipation of the adventure ahead mingled with an undercurrent of unease, unnoticed by all but Timothy himself. The safety video played, its instructions showing safety measures to the excited passengers. But for Timothy, the video held a different significance, a sign of the events to come. His eyes, fixed upon the screen, absorbed every detail with a quiet intensity, as if preparing for an inevitable reckoning. With the pre-flight routine complete, the helicopter lifted from the pad, its rotors slicing through the air. As the landscape below receded into a patchwork of earth and sky, Timothy's gaze turned inward, a storm gathering behind his calm exterior. Approximately 38 minutes into the tour, Timothy's resolve solidified into action as the helicopter traced the canyon's rim. With a sudden chilling moment, he unbuckled his seatbelt and reached for the door, his movements deliberate and unhurried. For a fleeting moment, the world seemed to hold its breath as Timothy stood on the door, his gaze fixed upon the land below. Maria Langer, the pilot entrusted with the safety of her passengers, watched in disbelief as Timothy's intentions became clear. With a swift motion, she lunged forward, her hands outstretched desperately to prevent the unthinkable. But Timothy, consumed by his thoughts, was beyond reach, his grip on reality slipping away with each passing moment. And there, without hesitation, he plunged 4,000 feet to his death. For those left behind, the shock of his actions echoed through the cabin. The passengers were left speechless because of the sudden events that unfolded before their very eyes. In the aftermath of Timothy's tragic leap, the helicopter teetered on the edge of chaos, its balance disrupted by the sudden loss of weight. Passengers, gripped by terror, clung to one another as Maria Langer fought to regain control, her hands steady despite the turmoil raging within. As the helicopter touched down near White's Butte, its occupants emerged shaken but unharmed, their minds reeling from the events that had unfolded in the skies above. For Maria Langer, the memory of that tragic day would haunt her for the rest of her days. For Timothy Clam, his final act of defiance shows the uncertainties hidden within oneself. Neither did his closest friends or family know that he longed to seek help for what he was fighting against inside his mind, only for him to decide that his last resort to end his misery was to take his own life. In the days that followed, authorities combed the canyon for traces of Timothy's passing, their efforts hindered by the terrain and massive expanse of the landscape. Despite their best efforts, no sign of Timothy could be found, leaving only questions in their wake. What if his final moments had been spent embracing the world's beauty rather than seeking escape from it? As people gather around to find more questions than answers to his passing, we are sure of one thing: Timothy has already found peace from what he was going through. No matter where he has already escaped the misery he has been battling. Garrett Bonkowski and Jessica Bartz were just your average couple, filled with hopes and dreams for the future. They hailed from Peoria, Arizona, and had been planning a big move to Jessica's hometown in Iowa. It was a chance for them to start fresh, explore new opportunities, and build a life together in a place filled with memories from Jessica's childhood. Before they hit the road, Garrett and Jessica spent weeks packing their belongings, sorting through old mementos and saying goodbyes to friends and family. There was an excitement in the air, a sense of anticipation for the adventures ahead. They mapped out their route, planned their stops, and packed their car with everything they would need for the trip. As they drove through the vast expanse of the American Midwest, Garrett and Jessica shared updates and photos of their travels on social media. They gazed upon the towering skyscrapers of Chicago, the Great Plains rolling hills, and the Rocky Mountains' majestic beauty. Each new sight was a reminder of the vastness and diversity of their country, and they felt grateful to be experiencing it together. However, as they moved from home, communication between Garrett and Jessica became less frequent. Text messages went unanswered, phone calls went straight to voicemail, and their social media accounts fell silent. At first, their friends and family chalked it up to spotty cell service or busy schedules, but as days turned into weeks, concern began to grow. Sally Liddicoat, a close friend of Jessica's, was the first to raise the alarm. She had been eagerly following Garrett and Jessica's trip online, but she knew something needed to be fixed when she noticed that they hadn't posted anything in over a week. She contacted Jessica's family, but no one had heard from her or Garrett since they had left Arizona. In Iowa, Jessica's family anxiously awaited their arrival. They had been counting down the days until Garrett and Jessica would pull into their driveway, but their excitement turned to worry as the days passed with no sign of them. Jessica's father, Brian Bartz, contacted the authorities to report his daughter and her boyfriend missing, and the search for Garrett and Jessica began in earnest. Investigators retraced Garrett and Jessica's planned route, scouring surveillance footage, interviewing witnesses, and cross-referencing credit card activity. They searched rest stops, gas stations, and roadside attractions, hoping for any clue leading them to the missing couple. But as the days stretched into months, their efforts yielded little results. Then, just when hope began to fade away, a breakthrough came in the form of a hiker's discovery in the Grand Canyon. The bodies of Garrett and Jessica were found near a remote trail, their car parked nearby, abandoned and forgotten. It was a tragic end to a journey that had begun with so much promise, shocking their communities back home. The news of Garrett and Jessica's disappearance and subsequent death spread quickly, sparking an outpouring of grief and disbelief from friends, family, and strangers alike. Memorials were held, candles were lit, and tributes poured in. But amid the mourning, there were questions about what had happened to Garrett and Jessica, and why their journey had ended in such tragedy. One theory suggested that Garrett and Jessica had simply gotten lost, taken a wrong turn, and ended up in the remote wilderness of the Grand Canyon. However, this explanation seemed unlikely, given that Garrett and Jessica were experienced travelers who had meticulously planned their route before setting out. Another theory floated by authorities was that foul play may have been involved. The remote location of Garrett and Jessica's remains, coupled with the lack of any obvious signs of an accident or natural disaster, led investigators to believe that someone may have been responsible for their disappearance and death. But without any concrete evidence or suspects, this theory remained just that, a theory. As the investigation into Garrett and Jessica's disappearance continued, their families grappled with the harsh reality of their loss. They mourned the lives cut short, the dreams left unfulfilled, and the unanswered questions that would haunt them for years. Ultimately, the story of Garrett Bonkowski and Jessica Bartz was an example of how even the best-laid plans could go awry, and that tragedy can strike when we least expect it. But amid the sadness and uncertainty, there was hope that Garrett and Jessica would be remembered, not for how they died, but for how they lived and for the love and laughter they brought into the world. George Mancuso was a simple man with a love for adventure and a passion for photography. George hailed from the busy streets of New York City, but his heart belonged to the wilderness of the Grand Canyon. George's journey into the canyon began long before his disappearance. As a child, he dreamed of exploring its vast expanses and capturing its beauty through his camera lens. He spent hours examining the canyon's photographs, imagining himself standing amidst its towering cliffs and winding rivers. As he grew older, George's dream became a reality. He went on countless expeditions into the canyon, each more thrilling than the last. He hiked its trails, rafted its rivers, and camped beneath its star-studded sky. George felt more connected to the canyon and its beauty with each adventure. But George's love for the canyon was not without its dangers. In 1999, he suffered a severe knee injury while hiking in the depths of the canyon. The injury left him bedridden for months, but it only strengthened his determination to explore further. Despite the pain, George was determined to continue his desire to capture the essence of the canyon through his photographs. In August 2001, George set out on his final expedition into the canyon. He was accompanied by his friend Linda Bramer, a fellow adventurer who loves the outdoors. Together, they planned to hike to the confluence of the Little Colorado River Gorge and Salt Trail Canyon, a remote and rarely visited area of the canyon. The journey started like any other, with George and Linda quickly navigating the winding trails and cliffs of the canyon. They laughed and joked as they walked deeper into the wilderness, unaware of the dangers ahead. As they neared their destination, dark clouds began to gather overhead. George and Linda knew that monsoon season was in full swing, but they were confident that they could outrun any storms that came their way. Little did they know nature had other plans. Suddenly, the sky opened without warning, unleashing a torrential downpour upon the canyon. The rain fell in sheets, turning the desert landscape into a muddy, treacherous terrain. George and Linda knew they had to find shelter fast, but there was nowhere to hide. As they scrambled to find higher ground, they heard the distant roar of rushing water. It was the sound of a flash flood barreling down the narrow gorge towards them with unstoppable force. Panic set in as George and Linda realized they were trapped, with nowhere to run and nowhere to hide. The flood hit with a deafening roar, sweeping George and Linda off their feet and into the raging waters below. They clung to each other desperately, fighting against the current as it carried them downstream. Rocks tumbled, trees crashed, and the once peaceful waters turned into a churning maelstrom of destruction. George and Linda battled the elements for hours, their strength waning with each passing moment. They tried to stay afloat to keep their heads above water, but it was a losing battle. In the end, they were no match for the floods of the canyon. When the flood finally subsided, George and Linda were nowhere to be found. Search teams scoured the canyon for days, combing its land in search of any sign of their whereabouts. Helicopters circled overhead, their searchlights cutting through the darkness as they scanned the canyon walls for any trace of the missing hikers. But despite their best efforts, George and Linda remained a mystery. Their families were left to grapple with the agonizing uncertainty of their loss, clinging to the hope that they would one day be found. As the days passed and eventually turned into weeks and months, theories about what had happened to George and Linda emerged. Some believed they had been swept away by the flood and drowned, their bodies lost forever in the depths. Others speculated that they had managed to find shelter somewhere in the wilderness, waiting to be rescued. However, as time passed and no sign of George and Linda surfaced, the truth became increasingly apparent. They were gone, victims of a cruel and unforgiving landscape that had claimed so many lives before them. And though their bodies were never found, their memories would forever roam the Grand Canyon, lost but never forgotten.